Hey girl, welcome back to Listen, honey. This is your host, Kiana. I know, I've been a little MIA, but I'm back. My summer course is finally over, so I have more time to talk about more topics with y'all. Before we get started with this week's episode, did you know we're on Apple Podcasts now? I know, so exciting. Do me a quick favor, make sure you rate and comment on this podcast so we can grow our community. That is all the updates I had for this week, so enjoy episode 5 over understanding different cultures. Alrighty, let's talk about it. So guys, we have a special guest joining us once again. So everyone welcome Mo. She's back.
Hi.
How are you, Mo?
I'm good.
Good. So I'm excited to have you back on. I feel like our last episode about the international student experience, we had so much more to talk about. We had so much more to talk about, just understanding different cultures. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm paraphrasing, but you said how at one university they had a whole course, right? About the Western culture, right?
Well, they had a whole like an orientation course for students of this new program on how to choose an American name, which is very problematic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I was very livid when I saw it. I was livid.
Yeah,
With livid.
I can't even imagine. But I know that so much goes into international students learning about the US and our different cultures. But as domestic students or even Americans, we don't really get a course on different cultures and different customs. So I wanted to bring you here today so we can talk about 5 different tips or even suggestions for learning different cultures and being open to it. And some of those do's and do not when talking to someone who's from abroad. Sounds good?
Well, yeah, let's do it.
All right, Mo, kick us off with the first one.
So I think my first one would be do not make assumptions about people based on where they're from, right? Yeah, just don't do it. It's not worth it. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I think for me it's like the quickest way to ruin a relationship. It's like when you make assumptions about like where or who am I, who I am, or what I've done in my life just based off of where I come from. And another thing that I want to say, and I know you are gonna come for me, but I'm gonna say it anyways because I'm tired of hearing it.
Other people.
Do not tell another person, especially if you're American, do not tell another person that they have an accent. Because guess what? You have an accent as well, right?
Right.
Please don't do it. It's not fun. It's rude. It's actually very rude. I consider that to be very rude because it's how you're going to say that and you don't even realize the fact that you're doing the same thing. Everybody talks differently. That's what it is. Like when you come from different parts of the world, everybody's going to speak differently. The fact that they have an accent or what you consider to be an accent does not mean that they don't know how to speak the language. They don't know how to speak English. It simply means that they have a second or third language that they have learned too, right? So please don't tell anyone that they have an accent because Americans have an accent. If you're from
Right.
the East Coast, from the West Coast, from the South, you all have an accent.
Right.
And I've had to adjust. I know, like when I lived in Minnesota, I had to train my ears to hear certain diction, certain tones, certain cadences of how people in the Midwest spoke. And when I came to the South, to Houston, to Texas, particularly to Houston, I had to readjust the way I listen to people and how they speak because I understand that people in the South speak very differently from how people do in the Midwest. And I didn't make any comments about it. It's just something I intuitively did. Wow, that was a hard word to get across.
You got it.
But I sort of expect the same thing from people. Don't make comments, just listen and ask. If you don't hear what they say, can you say that again, please?
Right.
But don't mention that they have an accent because it can make people feel very very disrespected, one, or two, very insecure.
Yeah. And I would add just to what Mo is saying, I think there's a difference from being genuinely intrigued by someone's accent and like say like, oh, like that means you must be from somewhere else. Like I want to learn more type, energy versus saying like, oh, speak the way that we speak here, or I can't understand you. Can you say it properly? So those are two different spectrums. I feel like the people who are genuinely intrigued by it and want to know more, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's okay. That behavior is okay.
Yeah, but I feel like they have to preface with something, or like, I feel like that is a case by case basis.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's like going to be a case by case basis for me. I can't speak for
Gotcha.
other people, but for me, it's a case by case basis.
Okay, that works. I would add to understand other people's culture is to do research. Research, Google shows you everything. There is so many different sources out there that you can learn about people's traditions and culture. All my friends know I have a thing about Ethiopia. I have a different interest about different places.
Like East Africa.
Just
Okay.
East Africa in general, I have an interest. And what I do, I Google things, I learn about their food. That's another way you can connect, is by trying their food, learning their language, learning their customs, learning about what it looks like there. Like there's different videos that you can see outside of American commercials, or the media that we see in the US. There's so many different sources to show you what it actually looks like in those regions of the world, anywhere you go. It can be Asia, Europe, wherever. So just do your research and learn different things. And I like food, so the way to my heart is food, and you can just try it.
Oh, speaking about food, because I've had people like try Nigerian food or like see what Nigerian food looks like. Just how someone did their food smells. That's very disrespectful. I've had
Yeah.
someone do that to me too once, and I was very, very offended.
Like
Very
my mom
offended.
says, if you have nothing nice to say, don't
Mash
say
up.
it at all. Don't say it at all. Just say no
If you know
thank
you're not
you.
if you know you're not an adventurous person when it comes to food, that's okay too. I'm not. So I
True.
rarely try other people's food, but
Mm-hmm.
I would look for something else to do. It doesn't always have to be food,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're gonna make comments like that.
Yeah, true. So what is the third thing that you can tell people as good advice or a different way they can learn about a culture?
I'd say ask people questions, and do it in a very respectful manner because you're the one who's coming to learn. But also ask people questions that you can't find answers to on the internet. So don't come to me and say, how did you know how to speak English? Because that's literally an answer that Google can give you in 0.60 seconds. Okay. Asking a Nigerian how they learn how to speak English, I can't help you there. But if you're asking me more nuanced questions, or you're asking someone from a different, that you're trying to understand and trying to get to know more nuanced questions, and I think they'll be more open to doing that.
Yeah.
And listen.
Yeah. Active listening. We talked about that in our summer course. Listening
Yes,
to learn and not listening to
to
respond,
respond.
but just really taking all the information in. So that's a good
And
point.
yeah, doing your research, read some books. Come on, we have so many books. Google
Yeah.
is free.
I would add for the fourth one is having empathy slash understanding. So when I wrote that point, I was thinking on the terms of knowing that your story isn't going to be the same as their story. You got raised in two different environments, and that goes from people from the US, people from anywhere, right? Of just understanding that at the end of the day, we're all human, we're all people, and everyone has a different story, and honoring that story. Like wanting to know more about it, knowing that pressures that you might feel in the US is going to be completely different than the pressure someone else might feel with living in the US and not being an American citizen. There are two different stories that you both are living and walking. And when dating or trying to merge the two, just being understanding that they're going to have different stresses than you, and they're going to have different things that they're facing that you might not be facing.
Right? Or they're gonna have different ways of life that is completely like the way you were brought up is not gonna be the way they're brought up. And I think something that is really important to highlight is that just because someone does something in a different way than you're used to does not mean they're wrong or you're right. It's just the way that they do things. Like you can fold a t-shirt in many different ways. So that's like just people can do things in very different ways, and that's okay as long as they come to the same conclusion.
So, Mo, what would be your last thing that you want to bring up about
Yeah.
different cultures and learning it?
I think for me, one thing that I think is just really important is respecting people's names, respecting people's cultures, right? Respecting people's heritage, countries. And I say this because I think I mentioned this in the last episode. Like my full name is Morountodun. That's like what my parents gave me, right? But in the US, and since I started this whole international student journey, I've gone by more. For some of it was not my choice because someone else gave me that name because he was like, you Nigerians and your long names is Ghanaian. So, anyways, that was that. And he was like, you Nigerians and your long names, blah, 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 blah. And the whole school started calling me more. And so I've just sort of done with it. But the other reason why I've chosen to stick with the nickname, I guess, more is because the literal translation of my name means I found something sweet. And it's a name that my parents gave, like in Nigeria, or I don't want to say in Nigeria. Nigeria. I think in the Yoruba tradition, you don't name a child until after 7 days after they're born, right? And the name that is assigned to a child it's kind of like an indicator of the circumstance around their birth. It's like it has a very, very deep meaning, right? And parents take a lot of time to decide like what name they want to give a child. And the only reason why I chose not to go by my full name in the US is just because I've had a lot of people mispronounce it, and I've tried to teach a lot of people how to pronounce my name, and they for some reason have just not ended up getting it. I'm like, okay, well, if you're not gonna pronounce the name correctly, you can call me more, because I'd rather you call me that than for you to call me my name and mispronounce it. I think to me that's just very dangerous.
And I joke about it all the time with myself, but for me, if you don't say Kiana, I'm not answering. I don't know who you're talking to. I don't know who that person you're referring to is, but it's not me. And just honoring that our parents gave us these names for a reason. And like Mo said, I'm just going to echo it, like honoring that it comes with meaning. It comes with a sense of pride, like it's your name. And you wouldn't want someone to say your name wrong and still answer to it. You know, you got to put your foot down and say, no, this is how you say it.
I think it's really interesting because I applied to a school a few years ago, and I got into that school and I was in the process of doing the orientation, and I think I went through an orientation specifically for international students again. Okay. And they were talking about, and one of the things in the whole, like there was a bunch of stuff to, like a checklist, right, of things to do. And one of the things on the checklist was choosing an American name. And I remember I saw that and I lost it. I was very, very offended because of all of the reasons I've just mentioned, right? Like names are very important. And so for international students who are coming to the US and are adding to your whole diversity, recruiting, global perspective and all of that marketing tools that we all use, that we're used to seeing universities, right? Bringing them in and then you're telling them to diminish a part of themselves that is so important, which is their name. I think that's very, very problematic. And for all of those schools who are doing that ain't cool.
Yeah, stop it immediately, please.
Yeah.
Because it's not worth it. It's not.
If the student chooses to do it, if the individual chooses to do it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But that should not be something that should be in an orientation like checklist.
Well, thanks for coming to the podcast again, Mo. It was a pleasure to talk about all things international with you. And I hope we can do it soon.
Yeah, man, part 3.
Yeah, we have a whole part 3 of this experience. And I hope everyone got something new out of it or found at least one tool that they can use to just learn about a different culture and start that conversation with somebody, or even if you don't even have a conversation with that person, just learn something new. Learn something new that's not going on within our 4 walls during this time,
Right.
That is all for episode 5, Understanding Different Cultures. Make sure you check back in 2 weeks for a new episode from me. As always, keep rising, keep shining your light, and keep protecting your peace. Till next time.